Be Controversial still with us.
Yep.
Uncle Steve. You know, Be Controversial has been watching pretty regularly since we bumped into each other through the Timcast call in. And brother, I appreciate your continued support. I really do.
Yes. Support is appreciated. All right.
So this morning we're going to be talking about Canada.
That's right.
Oh, Canada. Or should I say blame Canada?
America's hat is often a subject of ridicule and lighthearted joking between two brother nations. So it's okay. We love Canada. I thought the trucker convoy, the trucker protest, that was actually amazing. That was awe-inspiring.
Yes,
and
absolutely. And you know, we actually covered the trucker convoy a couple of times, and one of the covers we did on that was on a Firearms Friday, because it was amazing what happened up there. The Canadian police said at one point that they were going to go hands off on the trucker convoy because they, and I quote, might be armed.
Yeah.
And that, like that right there, that's all the reason you need for the Second Amendment.
Yep.
The government will respect your rights if you might be armed, right? And there was never any suggestion in there that anybody was armed, that anybody had seen a firearm available, but it was basically, well, you know, some of these truckers, they drive across the border, they deliver to America. There's a chance that they might be armed. And that was enough to stand down the entire Canadian police force.
Yeah, there's a chance they might be, you know, transporting Nigerian yellow cake uranium homemade dirty bombs across the border as well. Okay, that could be anything. Anyway,
do me a favor and try to speak up a little bit, Mario.
Okay.
It may be me. Let me get a comment from you guys. How's Mario's audio coming through?
Yeah, how's my audio coming through? Can you guys hear me, or am I muffled, or what? Give me a 1 for good. Give me a 2 for not so great.
So, anyway, let's go ahead and kind of summarize what's going on. Canada is basically in free fall right now.
Economically, and now it's finally caught up with politics. Okay, so if I can, let me just give you a brief look at what life is like right now. Okay, for actual Canadians currently under this pro mass immigration regime, which has been going on since shortly after Justin Trudeau took office. Justin Trudeau took office in 2015, I believe. So he's been in for about like 9 years. Okay. And for him to actually win another election would break Canadian history. No prime minister has won more than three consecutive offices. All right.
Now, to be clear, though, there's nothing to prevent him from doing that. It hasn't happened before, but it's not like in America where having where you don't get to run for a third term.
He would certainly lose. Okay, barring massive election fraud.
Oh yeah. But the point is, he could run.
Yeah. There's nothing to stop. You can continue running in perpetuity in like a parliamentary democracy. Okay, there are no limits on that. Which is why Merkel was in charge of disastrously in charge of Germany for like 15 years. Okay. Okay. So what's going on in Canada right now is an economic collapse and political collapse related to uncontrolled, out of control immigration. All right. Now, this does kind of tie into what we talked about yesterday. Canada is a portent, all right, of like a dark future that America could be facing if the pro-business, pro-immigration minded people within our government, both left and right, have their way. All right.
It's kind of looking at it's kind of like looking at California for the way that their policies, you know, every state is a laboratory of democracy. California is a forecast of bad ideas.
Right.
You try it in California, it fails, and then of course you implement it everywhere else.
Right. So back in 2015, Canada, the Liberal government, okay, under Justin Trudeau, basically told the people that we're going to have mass immigration. We're going to bring in more immigrants than ever before. The majority of them coming from India and China, right? They were told that the same thing we were told, that it was going to be mostly, high skilled immigration that's going to immediately boost and enhance the economy of the state of Canada. Well, after about 9 years, what have they actually received, right? What are the gifts of this diversity? Diploma mills, okay? Talking about how the best and brightest, how the certification for these people, well, most of it's a scam, okay? People will, in India, you can just pay and receive certifications, okay? You don't have any competency for the job, and when you show up to the job, basically the people already working there have to train you because the company's already gone to great lengths to bring you on. A housing shortage of 4 million homes. Canada has a real estate crisis, all right? Homes are unaffordable, homes are in short supply, and rents are out of control. 15% youth unemployment. So young people can't get a job because immigrants are holding all of those entry-level positions, like say Tim Hortons, which is a national icon in Canada, right? It's like Dunkin' Donuts and McDonald's kind of in one. Think of it that way, right?
It's like Dunkin' Donuts if Dunkin' Donuts was a what do you call it? An heirloom pastry shop. I'll give them this. Tim Hortons donuts are off the chain.
Yeah, it's marginally better than Dunkin' Donuts, but I mean, Tim Hortons is goy slop, just like any other mass-produced food. Lineups for job fairs. Okay, so you've seen that. You probably see it. You can see the stuff on TikTok. Okay, like little tidbits. Okay, or little timbits, I should say, in Canada, where it shows like a single job position opening, right, for like a retail store, and then there'll be like infinity Indians lined up around the block trying to get this one job. Okay, just absurd competition for the most menial of jobs. $40,000 pay for citizenship jobs. These are basically bullshit make work government jobs. Okay, that the government hands out primarily to these immigrants. Protest.
So real quick on that, you're talking about these make work jobs. That's especially important in this context. Something I want you guys to understand. Obviously, we've discussed it here in America. We have an enormous problem with illegal immigration. Canada has a problem, but you'll often hear American celebrities talk about moving. I'm leaving the U.S. I'm moving to Canada when that racist Donald Trump takes office. Like, okay, for one, why Canada? Why not Mexico? Right?
Because they're still trapped in that mentality from like the 90s, or from during the height of the global war on terror, when the United States was the belligerent warmonger state establishing Pax Americana across the Middle East, and Canada was like the nice liberal friendly neighbor to the north who abhorred such designs, even though they contributed heavily to that.
Well, and it's also important
I saw Canadians in Iraq. I mean, Canadians were in Iraq when I was there.
Canada actually enforces rules on immigration, and most especially if you're trying to immigrate to Canada, you can't just say, "Hey, I want to come to Canada and enjoy the land of opportunity and find myself a good job." No, you have to have like a letter of intent that a company has already said yes. As long as you come in through the process, you will be hired. You have to prove that you have a job waiting for you. Their immigration process is much more strict than the U.S. process.
Well, that may have been the case. Actually, I'm sure it still is the case. It's just
it is. That's what I'm getting. You mentioned these bullshit make work Canadian government jobs.
Yeah,
a corrupt government is creating those make work jobs in order to end run their own immigration rules.
Right. Then you're having the people there on visas, whether they be student visas or work visas. All right. When it comes time to when it comes towards the end of their term, okay, because a visa is a temporary thing. A visa is not a green card. Okay. When it comes near the end of the term, they don't want to go back home, so they demand citizenship to stay in the country, and they'll have these stupid protests. You see them occasionally. There was a big one in the last few months, I believe, in Nova Scotia or New Brunswick. Could be wrong on that, or Prince Edward Island. Okay, either way, either like East Coast, far East Coast, Canada, where it's all these like Indians in the streets saying they're going on hunger strikes or whatever because we can't go back to India. Even though, despite being so proud of India and India #1 superpower by 2030, our culture is superior. Well, okay, maybe you can go back home then. No, 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 no. It's a violation of my human rights to send me back to India. I can't go back. You know what I mean? It's just bullshit logic, right? Hospital wait times and infrastructure shortage. All right, so much like the United Kingdom, Canada has like a national health service. Okay, it's a national healthcare single payer system. Of course, it has been flooded by all kinds of problems that come with people from, basically third world conditions, or especially from inbreeding. Okay, inbreeding is a big problem with certain segments of that Indian subcontinent. Okay, and all the congenital birth defects and shit that come with that. National Health Service in the United Kingdom is flooded with issues related to Pakistani inbred children. Wage suppression. Well, that's basically just supply and demand. You've got 100 people for one menial job. It's going to bring down the cost of labor. Companies unable to compete if they don't bring in if they don't do the same thing that all the unscrupulous companies, what they were doing at first in bringing in all of these immigrants to work low-paying positions. Well, now you've created a downward pressure on other companies where they can't compete either unless they bring in essentially slave labor to compete, right? So
it's the H-1B visa problem translated all the way down to the burger flippers.
Yeah, precisely. Yep. Now, refugee claims for citizenship. So if they don't get to stay in the country, then they'll immediately claim refugee status. You can see how that works. It's like a last gambit. 40 to 50% housing inflation. So the cost of housing has increased by 50%, basically in Canada. Think about that. That is a nightmare for young people trying to buy their first home. All right. The only people that benefits would be boomers who say, like, I got mine, and they're just looking at the cost of the value of their properties increasing by 50%. I mean, good for you, but save something for the rest of us, man. We got to eat.
Tim Lowry calls it Europe is practicing Canada like Europe is practicing suicidal empathy, and that's a great phrase.
Yes, but it's been going. What's been going on? What I'm trying to say, that the speed of the increase of immigrants in Canada is shocking. It's faster than anywhere else in the Anglosphere. Okay,
right.
I'm talking. They were flooded. We're talking millions and millions every single year in a country. Like, Canada's a huge country, but it's only like 30 million people. Like, think about that.
You know 41 million people, but yeah,
41
like 80% of the 80% of the landmass of Canada is uninhabited. So you're not uninhabitable, uninhabited.
Yeah.
Just
it's cold.
Billions of acres of wilderness.
It's cold. All right. Yeah. So like basically a fifth of the population of the United States, bringing in numbers of immigrants even greater numbers than the United States would. Okay, think about what that's going to do for demographic shifts. You know what I mean?
Like yesterday, we talked about replacement, and it's not white replacement. It's just plain old replacement.
In Canada, it would be straight white replacement. Canada's not a prospect nation. Okay, like, I don't believe America is either. Okay, but kind of ever since we started letting immigrants from Europe in various waves over the course of 17th and 18th, 19th century throughout our history, right? It's effectively been a proposition that anyone can become an American, right? Well, Canada never had that. Canada was founded by Anglo, Irish, Scottish, and French, okay, explorers and pioneers. It was, and they never had, other than they had some immigration in the 1970s, but it was from countries in Europe. Okay, that's where they got their Greeks and their Italians and stuff, people like that. But it's not, being Canadian meant something, or at least it used to. Okay, They're also Canada has an interesting history. They're probably the most conservative country at their core of any country in the Anglosphere. Canada was founded by people, Anglos, who rejected the American Revolution, and French who rejected the French Revolution. All right, so they called it the regime ancien. Maybe I mispronounced that for the French, but they were still king and country and living in a very pretty much Catholic theocracy until the 1970s. All right, and the Anglo Canadians were kind of the king and country. Okay, they rejected the Republican Revolution, republicanism. Okay, which defined the United States. Now, a 40% increase in rents. Think about what that does to the working poor, people who are living paycheck to paycheck, and that is that's going to be a large segment of any population. All right, any group of people, every economy is going to have people living paycheck to paycheck. What happens when your rent increases by 40%? You're completely screwed. You got no choice but to move in with other people. You have no choice but to be living like five to 10 to a house, and everyone trying to share that rent. It's just destroys any possibility of wealth generation for young people, or not just young, like people our age, millennials and younger. It destroys any chance for wealth generation. All right.
Like Mario, have you ever done the communal living thing, with several roommates?
No.
I did it
I
did it for a few years in my very early 20s.
The barracks is the closest I come to that.
Okay, so in my very early 20s, I lived in a house with 4 other adults. It was a large ranch-style house in downtown Savannah, and we were, I was 22, 23 maybe when we first moved into that house, and I lived there for a few years until I enlisted in the Army. So I was there for 3 or 4 years, but in that circumstance, it was great, right? Because the 5 of us had $800 a month in rent that we were splitting between 5 of us. And that wasn't something that we did out of necessity. That was an intelligent choice that we made so that, hey, we all had pretty decent jobs, construction jobs, stuff like that. But nobody was breaking the bank, right? Everybody in the house was somewhere in the $50,000 to $60,000 a year range. But this is in the early 2000s when that was actual money. You'd have to break 6 figures almost to have an equivalent lifestyle today. But in that circumstance, being able to split the rent that way was a great way for us to be able to save a little money, put a little back, and build on our upcoming futures. And that was a great option. I would contend that today, similarly, it's a good option for small groups of young people who have their heads on straight and are paying attention. It's a good way to get started on the cheap. But the concern, like Mario's laying out there, is what does a world look like where that becomes compulsory, economic necessity?
Yeah,
that's terrifying, and that's what the left is building for us.
Yeah, you're not smart, and living like that now in Canada, like you're not smart trying to get ahead. No, you're surviving.
Right.
This is what it's come to,
and that's all part of. Honestly,
it's one step away from living in the pods.
I think that's all part of the "you will live in the pods and own nothing" plan. Like the objective is to force you into smaller and smaller confines.
No, the plan is to make you grateful for the pods. Okay, look, you don't have to give up half of your income anymore to live in someone's closet and have limited access to a single bathroom. Okay, look, here are these pods. It's entirely your pod, 100 square feet. Okay.
Yeah, just plug in your Neuralink and enjoy your bedpan. All you have to pay for is your internet connection.
Yep, unlimited drugs and porn and video games. Have at it. Just kill yourself. Anyway, so 10 people, like issues where single family homes are where there's like 10 men living in the single family home, immigrants primarily. Okay, this is a problem in the United States as well. It's part of the way that companies will use foreign hires, H-1B hires, essentially as indentured servants, just packing them in a stable at the end of the day and bringing them out the next morning. Lower GDP per capita. basically everybody in Canada is poorer now. Everybody is poorer as a result of these immigration policies. Empty food banks, you say. Well, that kind of goes into what we said yesterday about that kind of scamming culture of these people from the subcontinent. There have been outrages on YouTube where Indians living in Canada making like six-figure incomes are actually going to food banks and just taking all the food, and they're like, they think it makes them look smart. Like, look, we save so much money by just going to the food bank and taking the food that actual poor people need. Like I said, no sense of shame. You're dealing with people who don't have any sense of embarrassment. Okay, that should terrify you. If you think about that for a minute, if you're incapable of shame, then there's nothing inhibiting your actions. There's nothing inhibiting you from taking advantage of everyone around you in society. And finally, basically, you have people working under minimum wage in Canada. Why would that be? That would be people taking advantage, basically immigrants using immigrants effectively as their own, like, cottage labor. All right, because in these familial or like clan-like structures, they can essentially do whatever they want to subordinates. That's just their culture. You being subservient to the master is just built into their mentality. Anyway, so that's kind of a QRD of what's going on in Canada. And all this has come to a head, and the government is basically collapsing. The Liberal government of Canada, which is, think of them as our Democrats, all right, is poised to lose decisively to the Conservative Party, which obviously would be like our Republicans, in the upcoming election. Now, are we going to get to an election? October 20th of 2025 is the deadline for holding a new national election in Canada, right? But it almost certainly won't make it there. We had famously in, I believe, like 2 months ago, is it Cynthia? No, Chrystia Freeland, okay, who was the finance minister and also deputy prime minister, resigned. Okay, she resigned rather than bring forth the basically she was going to have to post data on the government's on the economic situation.
Yeah, the finances report was about to come out, and she said,
she's about to come finance. She's like, nah, I ain't gonna touch it. Yep. Now she's also the deputy prime minister. Okay, that would be like the vice president quit. Okay, that'd be like imagine like Kamala Harris just quitting. Now I know patriots, I know that's a horrible thought, and you wouldn't want it, but think about what that would mean, like the political turmoil that would cause. The greatest show of no confidence imaginable. So she quit, which already Liberal MPs, ministers of Parliament, okay, for Americans who don't know anything about parliamentary. You know what, Chris? Do we need to explain parliamentary democracy briefly, so that otherwise this might be confusing for people? All right, so Canada is a democratic system, like, just like our system, okay, except they don't have a president. They do have a president, but it's more of a ministerial role. The prime minister is the guy calling the shots, okay, in a parliamentary democracy.
Canada's system is much more like the British system than the American system.
It's exactly what it's modeled on, right? So you vote for a party, and then the party decides who their leader is going to be. You're not voting directly for one man, okay? You're voting for the party. And it's not set on like rigid 4-year cycles like in the United States, or like 5-year cycles like in France, okay?
And new elections, there's not two parties. There's lots and lots and lots of parties.
And they form coalitions, okay?
And they form coalitions, and they form coalition governments. And when the new prime minister is elected, they refer to what's happening there as his forming the government.
Correct.
Because it is very much forming a new government. Yeah. Now, in a way, when Donald Trump is inaugurated on January 20th and he puts his cabinet in place, he is technically forming new government, but there's less of a kind of there's less of a sentimental continuity of government in places like Canada and Britain. When the new prime minister, their sort of equivalent of the president, is put in place, it's very much treated as an entirely new government in a way that we just don't think of it that way in America.
Right. So parliamentary democracies can move a lot faster. Okay, it's kind of an interesting contrast with our system. So with our system, no matter what scandals occur, barring like impeachment and then conviction by Senate, the president's going to be there for 4 years. Okay, it's just going to happen. All right, nothing you can do about it. And in a parliamentary system, elections can be called at any time. Either the party in power can call for a snap election, where it's like, okay, we think we're sitting pretty right now, so we're just going to call elections so that we can reinforce our mandate to do whatever we want to do, right? Sometimes this famously backfires on them, like Matteo Salvini in Italy, like a few years ago, where his government, like, suddenly you got your based leader, your right-wing leader, and then he calls a snap election, and now the communists are in charge because you fucked up. Anyway, so
because communists do exactly one thing well: they organize.
Organize and get power.
So you want to get your pens in order by shade? Hire a communist. They went to art school.
Yep. So so elections can occur at any time. So snap elections by the ruling party or ruling coalition, or you can have what's called a vote of no confidence. That's where basically the members of the parliament vote majority that we have no faith in your government. Basically, you suck, quit. Okay, and that triggers, if that happens, that triggers an election as well. So basically, yeah, basically a government can topple at any time in a parliamentary democracy. Okay, yep. So the cool thing about that is you can get change faster, okay, than you would in our system. But the bad thing is it's way less stable. Okay, so you have to be much more concerned. I mean, like, you look at our congressional critters, okay, cowards. All right, like, it's almost like the moment they take office, they're like, oh well, we can't be too aggressive because the midterms are in 2 years. Like, what was the point? Then if you're not going to do anything bold, if you're just worried about the next election, what was the point? Why even run? It's much more like that in a parliamentary system, because, like I said, the government can be flipped at any time, or coalitions can just break up. All right, which is what may happen in Canada with the NJP, the National. Am I getting that right? NJP or NGP? It's the party run by Jagmeet Singh. Okay, who's a Sikh immigrant.
I don't know the name of the party.
It's the New Democratic. It's the NDP. Okay. So they're in coalition with the Labour government. Jagmeet is talking about breaking off and just declaring they're dissolving that coalition, which would be the end of the government as well. So Trudeau has a few options here, I guess. He can resign, which is what most people suspect he will do, and then a deputy will step in and take his place. I believe and just ride out the government. Hopefully, they would hope until that October election. The guy that would be next up on the deck would be the former governor of the Bank of England. Okay, so just straight globalist. Okay, not going to be an improvement in the country. At least people won't have to look at Trudeau anymore. At least the national shame of Trudeau would be gone. I guess that would be the only positive for Canadians. Yeah,
I don't know that Canada can ever wipe off that much blackface.
You're right. So Trudeau could resign, and then they'll post another guy from the party. All right. Or he could basically, they could call it an election, and he would most certainly lose. The Conservative Party would be poised to take power after that. They would seize the most number of riding. Their districts are called ridings for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe it's because it took that long. That was the distance you could ride in a day, like back in whatever. Anyway, so the Conservatives would win if an election were called today. I believe Poilievre is the name of the Conservative leader. He is, yeah, I know, right? Never forgive, Never forget. Find that. Actually, no. Trudeau is the most talented actor on earth. He's impersonated virtually every race and ethnicity you can imagine. Go ahead and look for that meme if you want to. It's funny. Anyway, so Poilievre would take power. He is better than Trudeau, but I mean, he's still a globalist. Okay, he still serves the same corporate masters. It's basically like a uni party. Think of Poilievre as a rhino. The only party in Canada that I think is actually worth a damn would be the Canadian People's Party or the People's Party of Canada. I might be mixing that up. The one, yes, precisely. The one led by Max Bernier. All right, Max Bernier is actually a populist right-winger, okay, who vows to slash the immigration levels, moratorium on the immigration, which is exactly what Canada needs. All right, if their system, if the political actors in power and the structure that exists there would allow them to be so bold, that's what Canadians would want. Full moratorium on immigration. Will that happen? Highly unlikely, but a conservative government stands to at least get the numbers under control or at least be more responsible with what they're doing. One could hope anyway. But yeah, that's basically Canada right now.
Yeah, it's in free fall. Now, let's talk a little bit about Trump's comment. A week ago now, Trump quipped that he got a lot of flack for it from the lefties, and of course, I mean, they're lefties. They flip out about everything. It's their panic button is their default state. But
it's their game of pretending that we don't understand Trump's sense of humor.
Correct. Right. And it's the game of pretending that everything Trump says should be taken literally, but not seriously.
Right.
Which is incorrect. It is exactly backwards. Because remember, we're talking about the people who said Donald Trump lies constantly. Here's the 800 lies that he told in the last 2 weeks, and you look at the list, and it's things like, oh well, we had a pile of cheeseburgers a mile high. It's like, oh my God. If you say the words, the statement, we had a pile of cheeseburgers 1 mile high, if you make the claim that statement is a lie, you are either woefully illiterate or, and I contend more likely, you are lying, because you know damn well that the use of hyperbolic exaggeration as an expression to make a point is a common English language trait. And if you don't know that, you're not a native English speaker. Like, I mean, even if you're completely illiterate, you did not grow up, you did not make it to adulthood speaking English as your native language, with or without the ability to read, and not understand what jokes are, what hyperbolic expression is. You may not know the phrase hyperbolic expression, but you understand when somebody's exaggerating. I caught a fish that was this big. Well, okay, maybe it was only this big, but you're exaggerating for effect.
They're just being disingenuous. They know.
Correct. So Trump quipped that Canada should be the 51st state and Trudeau could be the governor to Trudeau, while Trudeau was down to visit. Basically, he went down to bend the knee and kiss the ring at Mar-a-Lago. And the headlines ran, Trump suggests that America should take over Canada. Hold up. Wait a minute. There was more to the comment. Yes, he did make a joke about making Canada the 51st state. But part of that conversation was Trudeau begging Donald Trump not to hit Canada with tariffs.
I should have mentioned that. That was part of the reason why the finance minister quit. That 25% tariff, they have no effective way to counter that. That would be the end of the Canadian economy. Okay.
Correct. And the reason for the tariff, Donald Trump is using these tariffs to push these other countries who rely on doing business with the United States into taking specific actions that we want them to take. For example, one of the several tariffs that Trump is threatening against China is contingent on Xi Jinping beginning to enforce the law that he claimed they put in place while Trump was in office, which was to apply the death penalty to certain drug producers and drug proliferators in China in order to try and stem the flow of fentanyl into the United States. That is also one of the contentions that we have with Canada. It's not as severe as the fentanyl that's flowing in from the southern border, but some of the drugs coming into the U.S. are coming in through Canada.
We have a migrant problem on both borders. Okay.
Yeah.
Not just the southern one. A lot of people don't realize that.
Right. The southern border is the more obvious and more severe problem, but there's also a problem in Canada. But so Trudeau comes down and he's begging on bended knee. Hey, we can't take a 25% tariff, Donald. We just can't do it. And Trump pointed out, listen, we subsidize your country. The United States subsidizes Canada to the tune of $2 billion a year. If you can't be a country without us paying $2 billion a year for it to happen, then no, you shouldn't be a country. If we have to pay your bills, you're not a country. So if we are financially responsible for your continued existence, then you should absolutely be legally subordinate to U.S. sovereignty. You should surrender your Canadian sovereignty or sprout a sack and get a job and build an actual economy. Personally, I am tired. I am sick to death as an American of subsidizing every damn socialist communist economy out there. If you live in a country that has a welfare state and is not America, America is paying for your welfare state. Even if only indirectly by subsidizing and paying for all of your national defense because you're tied into a NATO or the UN or one of those, and we're basically doing all of your national security and military operations for you, or the bulk of it. That is fungible finance funding your operations. But the fact is that even exterior to that, we're sending foreign aid money to just about every country on the planet. The countries to whom we are not currently sending foreign aid are barely technically countries. It really is that simple. And I'm tired of subsidizing these countries. So yeah, if you are on the American taxpayer dole, then you should be treated as a state, wholly subordinate to the sovereign United States of America, and you should be paying taxes to the United States of America.
We wouldn't want to ingest Canada anyway. It'd be like a poison pill. Like the only state you want, maybe Alberta.
Part of this conversation, absolutely.
Maybe Alberta, but then again, if you look at it on the map, that would be like crazy. It'd be United States and then like this big pimple coming up off its back. Okay,
now it would be nice. It would be nice to rent a car in Washington State and be able to drive to Alaska without a passport.
Well, we don't want British Columbia. That's basically China at this point. So, but what I'm saying is, like, if the United States absorbing Canada would be like a man with HIV and a woman with syphilis having unprotected sex. Okay, it'd be disaster. Both parties would be worse off. So, anyway, we do have a Canadian in the chat.
Yeah, I've seen angry Canadian AC, and I think I popped up one of his comments earlier. I hope he's not the only Canadian watching, but we do appreciate you watching this morning. I think we pretty much covered the conversation this morning, though, Mario. Do you have anything else you want to add?
It doesn't need to be a long episode. I think I pretty much got it.
Agreed.
Yeah. So yeah, what's going on? Unchecked, unfettered immigration to Canada. The taking advantage and abusing that system, scammers taking advantage of that system to just exacerbate the problems that came with it, has resulted in basically extreme political instability. The ruling coalition of labor and their assorted fiends are now at the edge, at the edge of their political lifespan, and the Conservative Party will soon take over, whether sooner or at the latest in October. And hopefully they can do a better job of of managing the absolute state of Canada. Okay, right now. So
yeah,
I love.
All right,
I love
well, let's button it up. Today is, hey, brother, this is it. 2024 is over today.
You know, I kind of briefly thought just before we went live, like, oh, a year in review show. That's what we should have done. Oh well.
Frankly, I want to do a 2024 recap. But I want you and Cameron both on that one. So I'll hit both of you up in the Camario thread later, and we'll plan it for maybe. Basically, we're just gonna have to shift the schedule around a little bit because I'd like to do a nice long episode, have you and Cameron both on, and leave room for some call-ins.
Yeah.
And do a year in review.
I have tomorrow off, so why not? Yeah, I can do it anytime. Tomorrow.
You know what? I'll hit Cameron up. I gotta go over to the farm tomorrow for New Year's Day, the traditional New Year's Day meal. So, but I could probably stay live until, I don't know, 10 or 11. Before we have to get in the van and head over to the farm. Right. So yeah, we'll coordinate that with Cameron after the show.
No on-air meetings. On-air meetings are bad. No.
Yeah, agreed. So, normally we save the safety brief for the weekend. That's Friday afternoon, last formation. It's close of business. Everybody's about to get dismissed for the day, and the sergeant comes out and gives you the safety brief. Hey, don't drive drunk, don't fry bacon naked, don't add to or subtract from the surplus population, and make sure that you keep all your little soldiers wrapped up in that rubber APC before you go deploying them into the hot zone. Right.
It was described to me as make sure that you have attached your blank adapters to your rifle prior to engaging in simulation.
Yes, and once you get out on the range with your battle buddies, make sure that you watch your lane. No crossfire. And of course, sex, drugs, rock and roll, videotape, and farm animals. No two at the same time, right? But in all seriousness, it's New Year's Eve. Tonight's the night. Tomorrow's the next year. So I know a lot of you, in my audience, I know there's a lot of old fuddy-duddies in my audience like me. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here at the house at midnight tonight. But I know there's parties out there to be had. Angry Canadian says, "Don't rub another man's rhubarb."
I think that's John. That's John Candy. John Candy.
Yeah.
The national treasure, a true national treasure of Canada.
But tonight, I'm sure a lot of you might get a couple cold beers in you. Might get your hands on some fireworks. Y'all be safe. Be safe. Make it to next year. Make it to next year with 10 and 10 if you can. And we'll look forward to seeing y'all in the morning, bright-eyed and hopefully bushy-tailed. So y'all be safe out there. Don't drive drunk. Don't fry bacon naked. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.